The mountain burned. Kale did not understand what was happening. He was small, barely 40 cycles old. His copper scales still soft like leather instead of hard like armor. He had been sleeping in the warm space beneath his mother's wing when the noise started. Loud cracks that echoed across the rocks. Bright lights that cut through the darkness like angry stars. His mother roared. The sound shook the cave walls and made small stones fall from above. She was the largest dragon Kale had ever seen. Her scales were deep purple, almost black, and when she spread her wings, they blocked out the sky. She was ancient and powerful, and she had always kept him safe. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, she was afraid. She pushed Kale behind her with one massive claw. Her eyes, gold like melted sun, looked down at him with something he had never seen before. Sadness. Deep, heavy sadness. "Stay hidden," she said. Her voice was like thunder rolling across distant hills. "Whatever happens, do not come out." Kale wanted to ask why. He wanted to understand. But before he could speak, the cave entrance exploded inward. Humans poured through the smoke. They wore black armor that covered their bodies like shells. In their hands, they carried weapons that glowed with blue light. Kale had seen humans before, from far away, walking through the valleys below. His mother had told him to stay away from them. She said they were dangerous. She said they did not understand dragons. Now he understood what she meant. His mother breathed fire. The flames roared from her throat like a river of light, washing over the first wave of hunters. Some fell. Their weapons fired again and again, each shot leaving burning holes in her scales. She fought like a storm. Her tail swept soldiers off their feet. Her claws tore through armor like paper. But there were too many. For every human she killed, 3 more appeared. And their weapons were strong. Too strong. Kale watched from behind a fallen rock. His whole body shook with fear. He wanted to help. He wanted to fight. But he was small. His fire was weak, barely enough to light dry grass. What could he do against so many? A loud crack split the air. Different from the others. Deeper. More terrible. His mother screamed. Kale had never heard her make that sound before. She stumbled, one leg giving out beneath her. A large weapon, carried by 4 humans working together, had fired something directly into her chest. Black blood poured from the wound like water from a broken dam. She turned her head, found Kale with her eyes. And in that moment, even as she was dying, she smiled. "Live," she whispered. "Remember who you are." Then she fell. The cave shook when her body hit the ground. Dust filled the air. Kale could not breathe, could not think, could not move. He watched as the hunters gathered around her, their voices loud and excited. They were celebrating, laughing, slapping each other on the back like they had won some great game. One of them, a man with a scar across his face, knelt beside his mother's body. He pulled out a long knife that glowed with heat. And he began to cut. "The heart," the scarred man said. "Get me the heart. Dominion Corp is paying triple for Elder Dragon cores." Kale did not know what those words meant. He only knew that they were taking something from his mother. Something important. Something precious. He wanted to scream. He wanted to attack. But his body would not obey. Fear had turned him to stone. The hunters worked for a long time. When they finished, they carried away a large container that pulsed with soft purple light. His mother's heart. The thing that had made her strong. The thing that had kept her alive for thousands of cycles. Gone, most of the hunters left with the container, but a few stayed behind, searching the cave, looking for something else, or someone else. "Check everywhere," the scarred man ordered. "Elder dragons always have young." Kale pressed himself deeper into the shadows. His copper scales blended with the rocky ground, but he knew it would not be enough. They would find him. They would kill him. Or worse. A woman walked past his hiding spot. She was different from the others. Her armor was the same black color, but she moved slowly, carefully. Her face was twisted with something that did not look like excitement or greed. It looked like pain. She stopped, turned her head, looked directly at Kale. Their eyes met. Kale prepared to die. He closed his eyes and thought of his mother, of her warm wings, of her gentle voice, of the stories she told him about the old days, when dragons ruled the skies and humans were just small creatures living in caves of their own. But death did not come. When Cale opened his eyes, the woman was still standing there. She had not called out to the others. She had not raised her weapon. She just looked at him with those strange, sad eyes. Then she turned and walked away. "Nothing here," she called out. "Just rocks and bones." The other hunters accepted her words. They gathered their equipment and left, carrying their terrible prize with them. The cave fell silent. The fires slowly died. And Cale was alone. He crawled out from his hiding spot. His legs shook so badly he could barely stand. He walked to his mother's body, to the great empty space where her heart used to be. He pressed his small head against her still warm scales and he cried. Dragons do not cry like humans do. They do not make sounds or shed tears. Instead, a dragon's grief comes out as heat. Cale burned. His body grew hot, hotter than it had ever been before. The rocks around him began to glow red. The air itself seemed to catch fire, but the heat could not bring her back. Nothing could. He stayed with her body through the night. When morning came, he knew he had to leave. The hunters might return. Other predators might smell the blood. He was small and weak and alone. He needed to find shelter, food, safety. Cale took one last look at his mother. He made a promise to her, silently, in his heart. He would survive. He would grow strong. And one day, he would make them pay for what they had done. He turned and walked out of the cave, into the harsh light of a new day. He did not know where he was going. He did not know what he would find. But somewhere out there, in the rocky wastelands of Draconis VII, a wounded human woman was also walking alone. A woman who had refused to kill a hatchling. A woman who had just thrown away everything she knew. Their paths would cross soon, and nothing would ever be the same. Yara Voss had been a soldier for 20 years. She had fought in 3 wars, killed more enemies than she could count, and earned medals that meant nothing to her now. She had followed orders without question because that was what soldiers did. That was what good soldiers did. But she could not kill a child. It did not matter that the child was a dragon. It did not matter that her commanding officer had screamed at her to finish the job. When she looked into those small copper eyes, she saw fear. Real fear. The same fear she had seen in human children on a dozen different worlds. So she lied. She said there was nothing there. And when the hunting party moved on, she stayed behind. Now she was a deserter, a traitor. If Dominion Corp found her, they would execute her without trial. Her name would be erased from every record. Her family would be told she died in combat. It would be like she never existed at all. She told herself she did not care. She told herself she made the right choice. But as she walked through the wasteland, bleeding from a wound in her side where a dragon's claw had caught her during the fight, she wondered if she had simply chosen a slower way to die. The old mining outpost appeared on the 3rd day. It was abandoned, half buried in sand and rock. But the walls were solid and the roof still held. Yara collapsed inside and did not move for a long time. When she woke, she was not alone. The small dragon stood in the doorway, watching her. His copper scales were dull with dust and dried blood. His wings hung low against his body like broken flags. He looked as terrible as she felt. Yara reached for her weapon, then stopped. "What was the point? Are you here to kill me?" she asked. Her voice came out rough and dry. The dragon tilted his head. He did not attack. He did not run. He just stood there, studying her with eyes that seemed too old for such a young face. "You saved me," he said. Yara blinked. She had not expected him to speak. She knew dragons could talk, but she had never actually heard one do it before. His voice was strange, like 2 sounds layered on top of each other. "I lied for you," she corrected. "That is not the same thing." "Why?" It was such a simple question. Yara did not have a simple answer. "I do not know," she admitted. "I have done many terrible things in my life. Maybe I wanted to do one good thing before I died." The dragon considered this. Then he walked into the outpost and sat down a few meters away from her. not close enough to touch, but not far enough to run. My mother is dead, he said. They took her heart. I know. I am sorry. Are you? You were with them. I was. Yara felt the weight of those words. I cannot change that. I cannot bring her back. All I can do is tell you the truth. What truth? That not all humans wanted her dead. That some of us are just following orders because we do not know how to do anything else. That we are afraid and stupid, and sometimes we destroy things simply because we can. The dragon was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, What is your name? Yara. Yara vos. I am Kale. That was how it began. The first weeks were difficult. Yara's wound became infected and she spent days burning with fever. Kale brought her water from a stream he found nearby. He did not know how to help her, but he tried. He sat beside her through the long nights, his small body giving off enough heat to keep her warm when the temperature dropped. When Yara finally recovered, she began to teach him. Your mother fought with fire and strength, she said one morning. That is the dragon way. It has worked for thousands of years, but it did not save her, Kale said. No, because the world has changed. Humans have weapons now that can kill even the strongest dragon. If you fight the old way, you will die the old way. Then how should I fight? Yara smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in months. With this, she tapped her head. Strength is important. Speed is important. But the most important weapon is here. A smart fighter beats a strong fighter every time. She taught him tactics, how to read a battlefield, how to identify weak points in enemy formations, how to use the land itself as a weapon. She taught him patience, which was the hardest lesson of all. Dragons were creatures of fire and rage. They wanted to attack directly, to overwhelm their enemies with power. Power is useless if your enemy sees you coming. Yara explained. The greatest warriors in human history were not the strongest. They were the ones who could make their enemies look the wrong way. Kyle learned quickly, faster than any student Yara had ever trained. His mind absorbed information, like dry ground absorbing rain. He asked questions constantly, challenging her assumptions, pushing her to explain not just what to do, but why. You are different, she told him one evening as they sat watching the sunset. Other dragons I have encountered were proud. They believed they were better than humans. They refused to learn from us. My mother was proud, Kale said. She told me stories about the old days, when dragons ruled everything. She believed those days would return. And you? Kale looked at his small claws, his wings that could barely lift him off the ground, his scales that were still too soft to stop a blade. Pride is a chain, he said slowly. It holds you to the past. I do not want to rule anything. I want to survive. I want to understand. And maybe, one day, I want to make things different. Yara felt something shift in her chest, something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Months passed. Kale grew, though not as much as he should have. The hard times after his mother's death had damaged his body. He would always be small for a dragon, his growth forever stunted by hunger and grief. But his mind had no limits. He learned to speak human language perfectly, without the strange double tone that marked dragon speech. He learned to read human writing, devouring every book and document Yara could find in the abandoned outpost. He learned about human history, human technology, human weakness, and human strength. And Yara learned too. She learned that dragons were not monsters. They were people, with their own cultures and beliefs and dreams. They loved their children. They mourned their dead. They told stories around fires just like humans did. You are not my enemy, she told Kale one night. I do not think you ever were. Then what am I? Yara thought for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed her hand on his head, feeling the warmth of his scales beneath her palm. You are my student, she said. And maybe, if you will allow it, something more. Kale pressed his head against her hand. He did not have words for what he felt, but he did not need them. Some things went beyond language. For the first time since his mother died, Kale did not feel alone. And for the first time since she could remember, neither did Yara. Outside their small shelter, the stars wheeled overhead. Somewhere out there, Dominion Corp was hunting for them both. Somewhere out there, other dragons were dying, their hearts cut from their bodies for profit. The world was dark and cruel and full of pain, but in that moment, none of it mattered. In that moment, there was only a wounded soldier and an orphaned dragon, finding family in the most unlikely place. The real fight was coming. They both knew it, but they would face it together, and that made all the difference. 5 years changed many things. Kale was no longer the frightened hatchling who had hidden behind rocks while his mother died. He had grown, though not as large as other dragons his age. His body reached only half the size it should have been. But what he lacked in size, he made up for in other ways. His copper scales had finally hardened into true armor. His mind had become sharp like a blade, quick like lightning, and the fire in his belly, once barely strong enough to light dry grass, now burned hot enough to melt steel. Yara had grown older too. Gray streaks ran through her dark hair. New scars marked her hands and face, but her eyes remained the same, hard and clear, and always watching. They stood at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the sprawling city below. New Carthage, the capital of human settlement on Draconis VII, a maze of towers and factories and landing pads that stretched across the valley like a metal disease. "Are you ready?" Yara asked. Kale took a deep breath. "No, but we need to know the truth. We cannot hide in the wasteland forever." The plan was dangerous. Yara would enter the city with forged documents, pretending to be a mercenary looking for work. Kyle would come with her, but not as a free dragon. He would wear a control collar around his neck, playing the role of a domesticated beast. A trophy pet owned by a wealthy soldier. The collar was real. Dominion Corp sold them to anyone who could afford to keep a captured dragon. The devices sent electrical shocks through the dragon's body whenever they disobeyed, slowly breaking their will until they became nothing more than living decorations. But Kale's collar did not work. Yara had spent months modifying it, removing the control circuits while keeping the outer shell intact. To anyone watching, Kale would look like a broken creature, harmless and obedient. It was the perfect disguise. Nobody feared a chained dragon. They entered New Carthage through the merchant gate. Guards checked Yara's papers, glanced at Kale with bored eyes, and waved them through without a second look. Just another mercenary with an expensive pet. Nothing unusual. The city was overwhelming. Kale had never seen so many humans in one place. They crowded the streets, shouting and pushing and rushing from place to place. The air stank of smoke and chemicals and sweat. Buildings rose so high they blocked out the sun. "Keep your head down," Yara muttered. "Act broken. Act afraid." Kale hated it. Every part of him wanted to stand tall, to show these humans that he was not their property. But he understood why this was necessary. Pride was a chain, just as he had told Yara years ago, and right now, pretending to be chained was the only way to stay free. They rented a small room in the lower district, where the buildings were old and the people asked few questions. From there, Yara began gathering information, while Kale stayed hidden, studying maps and documents she brought back each night. What they discovered was worse than they had imagined. Kale's mother had not been killed simply for her heart. She was the last elder dragon, one of the ancient ones who remembered the beginning of dragon civilization, and she had been the guardian of something called the Flame Archive. "What is that?" Kale asked when Yara first mentioned it. "A legend," I thought. Yara spread stolen documents across the floor. "Stories say the elder dragons built a great library thousands of years ago. It contains all their knowledge, all their history. Technology that humans have never seen. Why would they want it? Because Dominion Corp believes it holds the secret to faster-than-light travel. Right now, human ships take years to cross between star systems. Whoever controls that technology controls the galaxy." Kale felt cold despite the warmth of his own body. "They killed my mother for a map. They killed your mother because she would never tell them where the archive was hidden. She died protecting it." Yara looked at Kyle with serious eyes. "And I think you know why." The memories came slowly, rising from somewhere deep inside him. Dragon knowledge was not stored in the mind like human knowledge. It lived in the blood, passed from parent to child through generations. Kale had always known things he could not explain. Old words, ancient songs, the feeling that something important waited just beyond his understanding. "I have the key," he said softly. "Somewhere inside me. That is why they were looking for hatchlings. Yes, the hunters are still searching. Dominion Corp has been quietly capturing young dragons for years, testing them, trying to unlock the genetic memory. They have not found what they need yet, because they are looking for knowledge. But the key is not knowledge." Kale closed his eyes, reaching for something he could barely sense. "It is feeling. Connection. My mother did not just guard the archive. She loved it. And she passed that love to me." Yara watched him carefully. "Can you find it? The archive? I do not know. But I know I cannot let them have it. Whatever my mother died to protect, I will protect too." The weeks that followed were tense. Kale and Yara moved carefully through the city, gathering allies where they could find them. Not everyone in New Carthage served Dominion Corp. Some humans hated the company as much as any dragon. Workers who had been cheated, soldiers who had seen too much, families who had lost loved ones to corporate greed. They also found dragons, hidden in basements and abandoned buildings, wearing dead collars like Kale, pretending to be broken while secretly keeping their fire alive. There were not many, a dozen survivors, maybe 24. But each one was a spark, waiting to become a flame. "We cannot fight them alone," one of the dragons said during a secret meeting. "Dominion Corp has armies, ships, weapons that can destroy mountains. We will not fight alone," Kale replied. "Humans started this war. Humans will help us finish it." The other dragons looked at him like he was crazy. Work with humans? Trust the creatures who had hunted them nearly to extinction? But Kale had spent 5 years learning from a human. He had seen what they could accomplish when they chose to build instead of destroy. He knew that the wall between species was not made of nature. It was made of fear, and fear could be overcome. "My mother believed dragons were better than humans," Kale said. "She was proud and strong, and she died protecting the old ways. I loved her, but I will not make her mistake. We cannot win by being stronger. We can only win by being smarter, and that means accepting help wherever we can find it." One by one, the hidden dragons lowered their heads in agreement. They did not fully trust Kale's plan, but they had nothing else to believe in. As Kale left the meeting, Yara fell into step beside him. Her face was troubled. "There is something else," she said quietly. "I found out who leads the dragon hunting division for Dominion Corp. Who? His name is Director Marcus Cole. He was there the night your mother died. He was the one who ordered the attack." Kale stopped walking. His claws scraped against the stone floor. "He gave the command," Yara continued. "And he has been hunting the archive ever since. He knows about you, Kale. He knows you survived. And he is coming." The fire inside Kale burned hotter than it had in years. 5 years of training, 5 years of patience, and still the rage was there. Waiting, hungry. "Let him come," Kale said. "I am not hiding anymore." Above them, hidden cameras recorded their every move. Somewhere, in a tower of glass and steel, Director Cole watched the footage and smiled. The trap was almost ready, and the dragon had walked right into it. The resistance grew faster than anyone expected. Word spread through whispers and coded messages. A dragon who spoke like a soldier. A human who fought beside him. Together, they were building something new. Something that had never existed before on Draconis VII. They called him the Unchained. Kale did not choose the name. It came from a young human boy whose parents had been killed by Dominion Corp when they refused to sell their farm. The boy had joined the resistance at 14. Full of anger and nowhere to put it. When he saw Kale remove his fake collar for the first time, standing tall with copper scales gleaming in the firelight, he whispered the word like a prayer. The Unchained. The dragon who broke free. The dragon who taught others to do the same. The coalition met in abandoned tunnels beneath the city. Humans sat beside dragons, sharing food and information and plans. It was strange at first. Awkward. Generations of hatred did not disappear overnight. Old wounds still ached. Old fears still lingered in the corners of every room. But Kale refused to let the past control the future. "Look at us," he said during one tense meeting, when a human soldier and a young Drake nearly came to blows. "We are sitting in the same darkness, breathing the same air, fearing the same enemy. Dominion Corp does not care if you are human or dragon. They will use you until you are empty, then throw you away like garbage. Your kind killed my brother," the soldier spat, "and your kind killed my mother." Kale's voice was calm but firm. "We can spend our lives trading pain, measuring whose wounds are deeper. Or we can accept that we were both wrong, both victims, both tools in a game played by people who see us as nothing more than resources." The soldier stared at KL for a long moment. Then, slowly, he unclenched his fists. "How do we stop them?" he asked. "Together. Only together." The resistance began striking at Dominion Corp's weak points. Supply convoys that carried weapons to hunting parties, communication towers that coordinated the Dragon extermination program, fuel depots that powered the ships which patrolled the skies. Each attack was small, careful, designed not just to cause damage, but to send a message. Dragons and humans were fighting side by side. The impossible had become real. KL led from the front, but he never fought alone. Yara was always with him, her tactical mind turning chaos into strategy. Human soldiers covered the ground while dragons controlled the air. They moved like two parts of the same body, each one protecting the other. The rescued prisoners were the most important victories. Dragons who had been kept in cages for years, their spirits broken by collar shocks and starvation. Humans who had been imprisoned for speaking against the company. Each one, who rejoined the fight, was proof that Dominion Corp was not invincible. But success brought danger. Director Marcus Cole responded to the resistance with brutal force. He deployed the Worm Killers, elite soldiers in powered armor designed specifically to hunt dragons. Each suit stood 3 meters tall, bristling with weapons that could pierce the hardest scales. The pilots were volunteers who had passed psychological tests to ensure they felt no sympathy for their targets. They were monsters wrapped in metal. The first battle against the Worm Killers was a disaster. The resistance lost 30 fighters in a single night. Dragons fell from the sky with holes burned through their wings. Humans were crushed beneath armored feet. Kale himself barely escaped, saved only by Yara's quick thinking and a tunnel collapse that buried their pursuers. "We cannot beat them in direct combat," Yara said as she bandaged a wound on Kale's shoulder. "Those suits are too strong. Then we do not fight them directly." Kale winced as she tightened the bandage. "We make them fight shadows, ghosts, enemies they cannot see or catch." The strategy changed. Instead of large attacks, the resistance split into dozens of small cells. They struck without warning and vanished before the Worm Killers could respond. They spread rumors and false information, sending the armored hunters chasing phantoms across the planet. And they recruited. Every day, more people joined the cause. Factory workers who sabotaged equipment, pilots who accidentally crashed supply ships. Even some soldiers began quietly passing information to the resistance. "The company is afraid," Yara reported after meeting with one of their spies. "Cole is under pressure from the corporate board. They expected him to have the archive by now. Every day that passes without results makes him look weak." "Good," Kale said. "Afraid people make mistakes." But Cole was not just afraid. He was desperate. And desperate people do terrible things. The message came on a cold morning, broadcast across every screen in New Carthage. Director Cole's face filled the display, his scarred features twisted into a cruel smile. "I know you are watching," he said. "The creature who calls himself the Unchained, the traitor Yara Voss. I have something that belongs to you." The image shifted. Yara appeared on screen, bound to a chair in a white room. Her face was bruised and bloody, but her eyes were defiant. "Come to the Dominion Tower," Cole continued. "Alone. Surrender yourself, and she will live. Refuse, and I will make her death last for days." The broadcast ended. The resistance members looked at Kale with fear in their eyes. They knew what this meant. It was a trap. obvious and unavoidable. "You cannot go," said an old dragon named Thresh, one of the survivors who had become Kale's most trusted advisor. "Without you, the resistance falls apart. Without her, I would have died in the wasteland." Kale looked at the blank screen where Yara's face had been. "She saved me when she had every reason to let me die. She taught me everything I know. She is not just my ally, she is my family. Then we attack together, bring every fighter we have. That is what Cole wants. He will have the worm killers waiting. We would be walking into a massacre. So what do we do?" Kale closed his eyes. Somewhere deep inside him, the ancient fire burned. The key to the archive pulsed like a second heart. He had been avoiding it for months, afraid of what he might find, afraid of what it might cost. But some prices had to be paid. "I know where the archive is," he said quietly. "I have known for a while. I was afraid to go there because I did not feel ready. I still do not feel ready. But Yara taught me that waiting for the perfect moment is just another way of being afraid. The archive? What good does that do us now?" "Everything." Kale opened his eyes. They glowed with inner fire. "The archive is not just a library. It is a weapon. The most powerful weapon ever created. My mother gave her life to protect it, because she knew what it could do in the wrong hands. And in the right hands?" Kale thought of Yara. Of the humans and dragons who had chosen to trust each other despite everything. Of the chains that had bound them all for so long. In the right hands, it can change everything. It can break the chains forever. He turned to face the assembled fighters. Humans and dragons, young and old. All of them, watching him, with a mixture of hope and fear. "I will go to Cole," he said. "Not to surrender. To end this. While I keep him distracted, you will prepare the largest attack we have ever attempted. Not against the tower. Against the archive itself. I thought you wanted to protect the archive. I want to awaken it. And for that, I need all of you. Dragons and humans together, proving that we have learned to trust each other." Kale spread his copper wings. The archive was built by elder dragons who believed in connection, in unity. It will not open for hate or greed. It will only open for love. The word hung in the air. Strange, unexpected, but somehow exactly right. "Get ready," Kale said. "Tonight, we either win everything or lose everything. There is no middle ground." He did not wait for their response. He walked out into the morning light, spread his wings, and flew toward the tower where his enemy waited. Behind him, the resistance began to move. The final battle had begun. The Dominion Tower rose from the center of New Carthage like a blade stabbing at the sky. Glass and steel, cold and perfect. A monument to everything Dominion Corp believed in. Power. Control. The absolute certainty that some lives mattered more than others. Kale landed on the main platform without trying to hide. Guards surrounded him immediately. Weapons raised. Voices shouting commands. He let them take him. He let them bind his wings with chains and drag him through endless corridors. He kept his fire low and his eyes down, playing the role of defeated prisoner. Director Marcus Cole was waiting in a room at the top of the tower. He stood by a window that looked out over the entire city, hands clasped behind his back, watching Kale approach with cold amusement. "The Unchained," he said. "Finally, you are smaller than I expected. Size does not matter as much as you think." Cole laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Your mother said something similar, right before she died. She was wrong too." Kale felt the rage rise inside him. The fire wanted to burst free, to burn this man to ashes, but he held it back. "Not yet. Not yet. Where is Yara?" "Safe. For now." Cole turned to face him fully. The scar across his face was old and faded, but still ugly, a reminder of some battle long past. "I must admit, you have impressed me. 5 years ago, you were nothing, a runt hiding in the dark. Now you lead an army. Dragons and humans fighting together. I did not think such a thing was possible. Hate blinds people to what is possible. Perhaps, or perhaps you have simply fooled them into believing something that cannot last. The moment this war ends, your alliance will fall apart. Humans and dragons are too different, too broken. They will always return to killing each other. You are wrong. Am I? Cole stepped closer. His eyes searched Kale's face, looking for weakness. I have studied your kind for 20 years. I know dragons better than any human alive. You are creatures of fire and pride. You cannot change your nature any more than a rock can choose to float. My nature was shaped by a human. Kale met Cole's gaze without flinching. Everything I am, everything I believe, came from someone your people tried to destroy. Yara taught me that nature is not a chain. It is a starting point. What matters is what we choose to do next. Something flickered in Cole's expression. Doubt, maybe, or just surprise. Then it was gone, replaced by the same cold certainty. Enough philosophy. You came here for the woman. I will make you a deal. Tell me how to find the flame archive, and you can both leave alive. You know I will not do that. Then she dies, and then you die, and I find the archive anyway, eventually. Kale smiled. It was the smile Yara had taught him, the one that showed no fear, even when fear was all he felt. You will find nothing. The archive does not open for people like you. It never will. Cole's patience cracked. He grabbed Kale by the throat, lifting him off the ground with surprising strength. His fingers dug into the soft scales beneath Kale's jaw. I will cut the knowledge out of your blood if I have to. Every dragon carries genetic memory. I have machines that can extract it. The process is painful, usually fatal, but I have plenty of test subjects. Your machines will not work. Kale's voice came out strangled but steady. The key is not knowledge, it is connection. My mother understood this. She did not guard the archive with walls or weapons. She guarded it with love. Love? Cole threw Kyle to the ground. Dragons do not love. They are animals, monsters. No. Kale rose slowly, shaking off the pain. Monsters are made, not born. And humans are very good at making them. An explosion shook the tower. Alarms began screaming. Cole spun toward the window, and what he saw made his face go pale. The sky was full of dragons, not just a dozen or two, but hundreds. Every surviving drake on Draconis VII, flying in formation like a storm of fire and scales. And among them, human ships, resistance fighters manning stolen vessels, flying wing to wing with creatures they had been taught to hate. No, Cole breathed. That is impossible. You spent so long building walls between species, Kale said. You forgot that walls can be torn down. Below, the ground forces of the resistance poured through the streets. Human soldiers and dragons fought side by side, overwhelming the surprised defenders. Worm killers emerged to meet them, but they were outnumbered. The impossible alliance hit them from every direction at once, humans targeting weak points, while dragons provided cover fire. Cole drew his weapon and aimed it at Kale's head. If I cannot have the archive, no one will. Starting with you. Wait. A voice from the doorway. Yara stood there, blood still dripping from her wounds but standing tall. Behind her, 2 guards lay unconscious on the floor. You forgot something important about humans, Director. What? We are very good at escaping. She threw herself at Cole. The weapon fired, but the shot went wide. They crashed to the ground together, struggling for control. Kale rushed forward, but Yara shouted at him. Go, find the archive. I can handle this. Kale hesitated for 1 heartbeat. Then he turned and ran. The archive was not in the city. It was beneath it. Deep in the volcanic heart of Draconis VII, hidden in tunnels that predated human settlement by thousands of years, Kale flew through passages that should have been impossible to navigate. But somehow he knew every turn. The key in his blood sang with recognition, guiding him deeper and deeper into the earth. The cavern opened before him like a cathedral of fire. Lava rivers flowed along the walls, casting everything in red and orange light. And at the center, rising from an island of black stone, stood the archive. It was not what Kale expected. Not a building or a library or anything so simple. It was a crystal, massive beyond comprehension. Its surface covered in patterns that shifted and flowed like living things. Inside, lights danced and swirled, containing knowledge accumulated over millions of years. Kale landed before it. He felt small, insignificant. What was he, compared to this ancient wonder? "I do not know if I am worthy," he said aloud. "I am not an elder. I am barely a dragon at all. But I am all that is left, and I did not come alone." He reached out with his mind. Not just his own mind, but the connection he shared with everyone who had trusted him. Yara's fierce determination. The courage of the human soldiers who had overcome their fear. The hope of the dragons who had chosen to fight beside their ancient enemies. The crystal responded. Light flowed from its surface, washing over Kale like warm water. Memories flooded into him. Not just dragon memories, but something older. Something that came from before the separation of species. From a time when all living things shared the same spark. He saw the truth. Dragons and humans had met before. Long ago. On a different world. They had been partners then, allies, friends. The hatred came later. Spread by those who profited from division. By people like Cole who built empires on fear. The chains were never real. Kale whispered. We put them on ourselves. The archive awoke fully. Ancient systems came online. Power flowed through channels that had been dark for centuries. And from the crystal, a message broadcast across the planet, into every mind capable of receiving it. We are one. We have always been one. The war is over. The chains are broken. Above ground, the fighting stopped. Humans and dragons lowered their weapons, staring at each other with new eyes. The worm killers fell silent, their pilots suddenly unable to remember why they had been fighting. Cole alone remained unchanged. He stood at the broken window of his tower, watching his empire crumble, and he screamed with rage. This changes nothing. They will go back to hating each other. They always do. Yara stood beside him, battered but unbroken. She looked at the sky full of dragons and humans flying together, at the streets where former enemies were helping each other stand. Maybe, she said, maybe they will fall back into old patterns. Maybe the hate will return someday. But maybe it will not. Maybe this moment, this choice, will be the start of something new. You are a fool. I am human. We specialize in foolish hope. She smiled. And sometimes, hope is enough. The resistance took the city that night. Cole was captured and imprisoned. Dominion Corp collapsed within weeks, its leaders fleeing to distant worlds where they hoped to escape justice. On the anniversary of the Archive's awakening, Kale stood on the mountain where his mother had died. The ashes were long gone, scattered by wind and time. But the memory remained. Yara stood beside him. Her hair was fully gray now, her face lined with years, but her eyes still held that same fierce spark. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Forgiving us?" Kale thought about the question. He thought about his mother, about Cole, about all the pain and loss that had brought him to this moment. "No," he said finally. "Hate is easy. Hate is chains. You taught me something better." "What did I teach you?" "That humanity is not a species. It is a choice. A choice to see past differences. To build instead of destroy. To love instead of fear." He turned to look at her. "My mother gave me life. You gave me meaning." Yara's eyes glistened with tears she refused to shed. "You were the best student I ever had, and you were the best mother I could have asked for." Below them, ships rose from the newly rebuilt city. Human crews and dragon passengers, heading for the stars together. The Archive had given them faster than light travel, but more importantly, it had given them a purpose. To carry the message of unity to every world, to prove that even the oldest hatreds could be healed. Kale spread his copper wings. They were not large by dragon standards. They would never be large. But they were strong enough to carry him wherever he needed to go. "Are you coming?" he asked. Yara laughed. "I am too old for adventures." "You are never too old. You taught me that too." She shook her head, but she was smiling. "One more trip. Then I rest. Deal?" They rose together into the sky. The dragon and the woman who had saved him. The student and the teacher. Two broken creatures who had found wholeness in each other. Behind them, the sun rose over a changed world. Some chains, once broken, could never be forged again. And sometimes, the smallest dragon could cast the longest shadow.